Welcome adventurers to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. Today we're going to be talking about some of the prot warrior changes that are coming on board and whether this is going to be a good thing, a positive thing for the game, or a negative change. Is warrior the last stand against the wave of classes that have been affected by semi-negative changes? Or is this an attempt at Blizzard to listen to the community and actually address these changes? Now, I'm not talking about the changes specifically that were listed and simultaneously then reverted for Arms and Fury. It seems that Arms got a few mixed appreciation abilities, mainly Slam, which is kind of confusing in there. I primarily play Fury, so I mean, I guess these weren't. It's great. It was damage increased. I mean, it's not bad. So I'll take it, but then simultaneously reverted. Maybe some bad reception with those. Kind of confusing, but the ones I wanted to talk about was the Prot Warrior design goals and feedback on 11.1. So there was a blue post, and in it says, "Thank you all for your feedback. It's valuable and heard. Protection Warrior requires a very high APM to play currently." And for those of you who don't know, because I didn't know this as well, this is attacks per minute, I believe. And we feel that the APM requirement is too high APM, especially from frequently pressing abilities that are off GCD like Shield Block and Ignore Pain can be uncomfortable and even painful for some players. I've mentioned this a few times as being an issue myself, more in the sense of these abilities you want to keep up at a constant, and that's not a problem. It's just truly how much you have to cast it and adding it into the rotation and just recasting it. It's sort of like a arthritis check. So if you've been playing this game too long, I suppose it's a way to make sure, like, hey, maybe you need to play a different class of some sort. And Fury's kind of the same way too. You know, I mean, there's a lot of classes that are that play like that, but I think melee classes for sure. One of the culprits in driving APM is the high burst and rage generation, which feeds into dumping excess rage into Ignore Pain. This is great because what you want to do is you want to use Ignore Pain to essentially fuel the cooldown reduction of your other spells. So it's something that you not only want to do because, oh, you don't want this to be at 100 ever, but also because it benefits you too. So you're just kind of spamming it because, hey, if nothing's shiny and nothing's proccing right now, it's not like Fury where I'm not going to make it. It's not going to make it happen, but I'll do everything I can to do it and just dump rage until then. So it just makes sense. This is what has been driven with many of the changes we've made, cutting down on burst rage generation and moving more of it into steady sources. So you should always have enough rage for your mitigation and for your rotation without frequently dumping excess into off GCD abilities. The other major culprit is the frequency of Shield Slam resets via Devastator and Strategist. Not only is Shield Slam the primary source of rage generation, Shield Slam is also the highest priority ability for Protection Warriors. I know when I was making this mistake of going, oh yeah, like let's get these revenge hits as soon as possible, and it's like, no, you just spam Shield Slam, and then honestly, if it's AoE, then it's Thunderclap, and especially if it's the upgraded the Thunderstruck or whatever it is. So it's definitely one of those things of like you're spamming it like over and over again. So it does get excessive how often you're doing it. The other major culprit is the frequency of Shield Slam resets via Devastator and Strategist. Not only is Shield Slam the primary source of rage generation, the more time that Shield Slam is available, the less time you have to use procs like Revenge and Sudden Death or spend excess rage on Revenge. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm honestly at a point where my revenge only comes at a time when it's pretty much free and nothing else is available. Like nothing else is available because I'd rather Ignore Pain instead and then do more Shield Slams. The previous 30% reset rate makes Shield Slam more prominent in the rotation, and we're happy with and leads to other procs stacking up and rage accumulating while the warrior's trying to keep up with their Shield Slam resets. This also puts more pressure on off GCD abilities to serve as rage dumps, as opposed to abilities like Revenge, We feel that reducing Shield Slam's prominence in the rotation will allow for Revenge and other abilities to fill the rotation and serve to consume excess rage. I'm not super well versed in Fury, but this kind of happened with Fury as well. Fury is like, you can, of course, like you have Whirlwinds and Slam available, but I'm never in a state where I don't need to cast something else that would be better off. Whether it's my Bloodthirst procs or something or other. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be doing that. But I think that there's something that this comes at the cost that we're not talking about. And that's, you can't just basically take away the rage and go, oh, they're going to use it now. You also kind of have to buff those abilities. You have to make it more worthwhile for you to do Revenge. Otherwise, you're just nerfing the rage generation. So I don't think, like, this has to be multifaceted and requires a bit of a rework, to be honest, to be fully effective, in my opinion. Otherwise, I think you're going to upset more people than you're going to save in that situation. Not to say like the game should serve only me, because that's the class I play, but I feel like it's serving one set of people, but kind of ignoring the reason why people played it a certain way. We're monitoring protection's performance, especially the tuning of Ignore Pain and Total Damage. The Rage income changes affects other talents like Anger Management, and we're working to keep all aspects of protection competitive to follow these changes. Thank you again for the many helpful feedback posts here. So in this, I mean, the first one that comes up that I saw, it says, do any prot warriors actually want this? Every single prot main I've spoken to sums this up as horrible news. Meanwhile, Blood Vengeance and Brewmaster still weighted positive tuning by a margin gets a buff, while the best tank gets it by a margin gets a buff. I wouldn't say best tank. I'm a Blood DK main, and I'm gonna be real here. Show Brewmaster some love before the rest of us. It is kind of like, it's kind of went off the rails if like other classes deserve it. In reality, I don't think that Prot Warrior is in the top, but I do think that it does at least compete for being A tier, at least. I would say this is a, if the change goes the direction that they're saying, I do think that this changes things for the better, but I do think it does require a little bit more complex working than just saying, oh, we're just going to reduce how much rage gets generated. So you less need to use Ignore Pain just for rage dumps, because simultaneously, while you do use it for rage dumps, it's also kind of necessary. At a certain point, you do have to have it up at all times. And so even if it's a very nominal damage reduction, because of how often you're casting these things, not because it's not useful, it definitely is, but at a certain point, it's like, well, I still got to cast it. So you're giving me less in a way if you don't buff something else, if you don't buff what Revenge does, if you don't buff the fact that, okay, you don't want us to rely so much on shield slams. Okay, well, where is that damage source going to come from then? So let's take a look at some of these comments to kind of see the ideas that people are putting forth and what the community is saying about some of these changes. So looking at the first one, it says, every warrior I've talked to dislikes this change. I love high APM taking of warrior. It's pretty sad to see go. Not excited at all for tanks next season, which is bad because I'm always hyped about tanking. Can't imagine the amount of other tanks in my situation. And then plus it's going to be rough for non-tanks next season if Blizzard keeps going with this design philosophy. High APM off GCD is the reason I love Prot Warrior. Honestly, I despise Ignore Pain spam. I've been playing Warrior since 2005, and while I love the oomph of all the abilities, the mobility and sound effects, I've never spent more time than like a month playing my Warrior. I always like the start of an expansion playing my Warrior because I love this character. Then a month in, so annoyed at the spamming of this ability, never asked for it in the first place. Same, I'd love an alternative to shield block for magic damage instead of Ignore Pain. Reflect and the talent that lets block magic damage are both very good. I've never had an issue with magic damage on my Warrior. And this one says, what mitigation would you put in Ignore Pain's place? Every tank has some sort of mitigation secondary button. Ours is Ignore Pain. Without it, we'd never live in any packs. So I agree with this last one that the secondary does make sense. I think that shield block, of course, managing your uptime with shield block is very important, keeping that up as long as possible. And then ignore pain as being sort of, hey, you have excess rage because either how much you're tanking or how much output you're doing. You need somewhere to put this. Why not put it defensively? Just like if you had excess, you would put it somewhere offensively, say with the Fury Warrior. So it does make sense how ignore pain works, or the main concept. I just think the main thing is it becomes spammable because there's no efficient ways to rage spend as a prot warrior. And currently, if you're decent at your rotation, you're not going to be spending any time really, like, there's no efficient way to do it without lacking in other abilities. And the first thought that comes to my mind that worries me is that people go, well, then everything's going to be nerfed. And I agree. I worry about that too. I feel like the idea is, well, we're going to either nerf the rage generation or we're going to nerf other abilities damage. So you have to rely on other abilities. And nerfing to me isn't a way that's going to appeal to people who have been enjoying this method. I think the way to do it is to go, well, these other ways not only spend a bit more rage, but also either have defensive perks or have the ability to provide damage buffs in some way or another. So I think there's ways to offset this to make it to where you're not spamming ignore pain all the time, but then still getting a decent amount of benefit. I just don't think it's one dimensional of simply just going, well, let's just make it to where you don't have enough rage to spam it enough times. See, this is just kind of the way things are. All I can say is whenever you're having to constantly do it and it still doesn't feel like it's quite enough, I feel like something needs to be changed to where those abilities are either more meaningful or more mainstaying and longer lasting, instead of having to, otherwise you kind of feel like a priest just casting a bubble, you know, every time it gets destroyed, just constantly, and it doesn't feel as strong. And so because the ability is kind of staggering in it, I'm kind of in a state right now. Like I want to say that ignore pain is it's great whenever you have shield block and ignore pain up in a tank busting situation, because it feels like you can avoid more tank busters because of it. But this also feels antithetical to dungeon design in that there are so many tank busters. So if you threaten either the rage generation or how often that I can do it, then it feels like as a tank, you're going to be more at threat for those tank busters that are increasingly present in the game. So the only way to amend this is to make ignore pain more effective. Not saying like you just double its effectiveness so it's cast half as much, but something along the lines of, if it's going to be a rage dump, then make it to where, I don't know, where it's more effective, but then my rage generation is slightly hindered for its uptime. So it feels like I'm not having to, while it's up, cast it again, even though it hasn't expired, you know, like just like it goes max time, and then I cast it again because I'm once again there. Make it to where basically it's something that I don't have to recast until that timer is within its last second or two. That's the way that currently that shield block works, and we don't see anybody complaining about shield block. So why not? Why shouldn't this work the same? And also, the way that shield block works is perfect, because the way that it optimally is used is it's important to your damage that you deal as a prot warrior. I mean, it's not insane, but it's decent, right? It's okay. So I think that if you're going to have Ignore Pain work like anything, have it work more like Shield Block, and have it work to make those other abilities more effective, and have it to work to where it's not spammable, or you don't spam it because it's effective enough to not need to be spammed. There's a happy medium with this, I believe, and I know I'm kind of rambling, but I hope that it gets through, that it's not just a rage issue. I don't think that's the thing. Amazing that they take the last fun tank and stomp it to the ground. What a joke. I loved Warrior this past season. I think it was perfect. Not playing it next. Slower pace could have been fine. However, they need to completely rework the spec if they're going to do that. The way that Ignore Pain and Booming Voice works at the moment is completely incompatible with slower APM spec. Exactly. I see they're trying to do some of this, but it's all it's achieving is giving us dead globals and making the spec feel like crap to play. A fan of the way it plays at the moment, even if it's the APM is high. Yeah, so I would say it's definitely kind of like a catch-22. It works because the APM is high, even though the cost is the constantly casting things off of cooldown. If you reduce to where you're not casting off a cooldown, but you still need to be here, it's not meeting that necessary requirement to match its level of, well, this is what I'm inputting, this is what gets output. So you have to equate those things. So if you're bringing one down, you have to make I don't want to say this, that you have to make the effort match the output, but I think you have to make it to where things balance again, to where you're inputting this, it's lower, it's less spammy because the output is decent enough or lasts long enough to match that need. Right now, it seems like they're both very high. And I think that there is at least a portion of prot warriors who don't like that. And I think that's totally fine. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. I would like to see what prot warriors or any tank specs have to say about this. What are the issues that are plaguing your spec? Let me know as well. We do make videos about all classes. I try to be at least well informed about most, but I think that tanks is the one that it kind of triggers my spidey sense. So I try to at least stay on top of things. So looking into season 2 and further into World of Warcraft content, I hope this is a positive change. We hope it's not like the promises that they made for tanks before the War Within, which was that damage was going to be less spiky and there was going to be less tank busters, because we kind of seen how that's gone, and it's been kind of a make or break, very much a deal breaker for any new tanks or even tanks who are just kind of done with it. So hopefully this is something over those positive changes to kind of reduce the stress and, like I said, like the bone pain after spamming one ability for so long. It just becomes excessive. I think it causes a lot of burnout. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe to the page while you're at it. Of course, catch us live on twitch.tv/ShawnSetGO. That's where we stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We do stream at European time, Central European time currently, but hopefully some of the content that we do as well can hit normal time zones as we stream later and later in the day. So hopefully this sees you well, but until next time, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.